Me again here at the shop, and one more video about bike maintenance, and we're going to talk about a little bit of keeping your bike clean, washed, without having to literally wash it with soap and water. Eventually that is important, you do every once in a while, but for like a daily thing after you ride, a quick clean, wipe clean, there are a few things that you can do waterless, especially if you live in an apartment or you have very little time to bring the hose out and do that whole wash. Maybe that's something you will do once a month or maybe once a week if you have the time. But so I have a few things here from Muc Off. It doesn't necessarily need to be Muc Off products, although we have them in the shop. Something I like to use is a brand that I think they do very good products for, specifically for bicycles, and also they do for motorcycles. But for bikes it works great, but there are other brands like Finish Line and a bunch of other products you can use. But since I have this on the shop, I'll show these, and I'm sure other brands have similar products. So let's go to the workbench and I'll show you the products and how to use them. So this bike needs like a wipe clean. It doesn't need a super deep wash right now. So that's maybe your case, and especially if you sweat a lot during your ride. Here in summer, Florida, we sweat. My bike gets all sweaty on the frame, on the handlebar. Even if you ride indoors, you know how sweaty it can be, and it's the worst thing for your bike. Worse than getting rain is your sweat, because it has salt, and salt really corrodes and rusts every bolt and metal things, and it can be a real problem. For example, we get a lot of Pinarellos that have a junction box right here on the bottom of the frame, and those little screws, the sweat falls always in there, and it ends up stripping or gluing the screw in the frame, and then it's super hard to remove it, and so it can be costly. So always after a ride, a sweaty ride, an indoor ride, you should use, for example, Muc Off has a waterless wash, and all brands today carry those, and it's a super simple product where you can spray it on your frame. It's safe for carbon, aluminum, your paint, and just wipe it. You don't need to rinse it. So it's super practical, and you can clean your frame and your handlebars and remove all the sweat. So this is a great way to remove all the sweat or dirt. And you could say, well, why can't I use just a humid cloth with some water and wipe it? That's great. You will be able to remove the salt, but a lot of times there's a lot of grease or oil from your hands or from the road, and these waterless products, they have at least something to remove, really remove everything, every impurity that might be deposited on your frame or on your handlebar. So it's better to use, if you can, a waterless product. Another thing, then, this is not from Muc Off, and you can buy this on Amazon, is isopropyl alcohol. I don't like it to use it to spray it on the frame, although it would be okay, but I like to use it like in some places like your water bottle cages, because the good thing of isopropyl alcohol, it will really eliminate every type of water, because alcohol evaporates, and if there's any water there, humidity, it will remove that, plus it kills any bacteria. And where I really like to use it is under the hood covers. So I remove the hood, especially this place. So you'll see on this bike a lot of like dirt and salt accumulated because you sweat, and all this sweat comes under the hood. And if you don't take care of that, it will start rusting all of the bolts, the bolt clamp that holds your shifter to the handlebar. So I like to use isopropyl alcohol under the hoods to clean it and remove every salt or grease or whatever there's under here. That's really nasty. So after I use the waterless isopropyl alcohol, removing any sand, dirt, and sweat, I like to use bike protection. This one, I really do like it because it's great for detailing. It leaves your bike really shining, really nice, but it also protects your bike from humidity and rust. It's also a rust repellent, and it protects your frame. So it's a great way to protect your bike also from the sun, so it keeps the paint of the bike nice and protected if you keep your bike for a long time outside. So it's a great product as a detail finishing product. And what I do, I like to spray, because this can get all over the place and you want to avoid to spray this on your disc brakes. So I like to spray it on a cloth and then spread it all over the bike frame. Okay, going a little bit more on the lubrication side, I'm not going to talk about chain lube because there's, I think, a lot of videos. I can talk a little bit about that, dry lube, wet lube, but an overall all-purpose multi-use lube. This is a shop size. You can get a much smaller can, and again, it doesn't have to be from Muc Off, but I like to spray this on the joints of the derailleur, front derailleur, rear derailleur, to keep that running good. And also it will protect from any water and rust, especially on those components that stay on the bottom of the bike and that gets usually a lot of water. Now, if you want to really keep your bike from rusty, especially, you know, on the screws that hold the water bottle cage, because of you put the water bottle there with Gatorade and sugar and salt, those tend to rust pretty quickly. A way to avoid that is to, for example, this one, the HCB1, it's a corrosion barrier. So what I usually do, I get a cup, spray this inside the cup with the screws, leave it there for a few seconds, then I remove it without completely drying it, and then I screw it. For example, I screw the water bottle cages in there and let it dry, because that will create a protection of really inhibiting any type of corrosion with the screws, because you don't want those screws to get rusted or they can cause serious problems. For disc brakes, the only thing I would recommend using is first isopropyl alcohol, and if you want to go a little further than that, you can also use a specific product for disc brakes. So you don't want any product that will leave any type of residue on your rotors. So, or you use isopropyl alcohol or something like this from Muc Off, that is a disc brake cleaner. Let's go to the chain, and one thing I like to do, if you don't want to degrease your whole chain and wash it, there's something you can do after a ride that will keep it pretty clean, especially if you're using dry lube that won't accumulate a lot of dirt and you want to keep the chain clean on the outside. There's one thing I always do, I'm going to show you right now. So one thing I like to do after a ride is get a degreaser that requires no rinse. It evaporates, it dries by itself, so you don't need to rinse it afterwards. So what you do, you get a clean rag and you spray it, and then you go through your chain. And that will pretty much clean the outside. Of course, it's not going to clean the inside, but it will avoid accumulating too much residue or too much filth on your chain on the outside, and you kind of rinse it. And then the following step, if you need it, depending on how much lube or how much you have ridden the bike, re-lube the chain. Just waited a minute or two just to completely dry out from all the degreaser, and then reapply the lube. So these are a few things I like to do after a ride to keep my bike free from salt, sweat, dirt, and riding good, looking nice, until it accumulates enough grim on the drivetrain, and then I will degrease and wash everything. But this is a waterless way to keep your bike clean and riding great. And if you enjoy this video, and if you even have ideas of videos you would like me to do, leave them in the comments. I really appreciate your interaction with the videos. And as always, guys, I'll see you on our next ride experience. Ciao.